Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those you don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where sales teams treat inbound leads like the back-to-school scramble for the best locker. May the odds be ever in your favor. Well, I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you scale from 7 figures, which is good, to 8 and 9 figures, which is outstanding. Together, we supercharge revenue growth, create premium valuation, and craft a business you're proud of and a life of impact and freedom that you love. Well, it is that time of year again, back to school. A lot of that's been happening around here this week. It's a familiar time that's mixed, I'd say, with kind of, bright-eyed optimism, fresh start and all, and the stomach-churning fear of the unknown. Whether it's a child stepping into a new grade or being promoted, maybe a new school, or a young adult venturing off to college. A number of our friends have been dropping their kids off at college this week. There is definitely a thrilling yet terrifying blend of emotions that's almost tangible in the air. Yeah, and a lot more traffic as well, if you haven't noticed that. How was the first day of school for you? Did you look forward to it? Did you dread it? Maybe somewhere in the middle? I never really liked it myself. I always kind of felt, awkward. I haven't seen people over the summer. Am I going to fit in? Will people like me? I mean, the only thing that made it better as I got older was sports. I played everything growing up. And of course, football was and is just huge in Texas. And football practice always started a few weeks before school. So that made the first day not really a first day because I already had teammates, and, it made it a little bit better later on. I think sales is kind of like that first day of school too. Especially if sales isn't your background. Maybe if you're an engineer or on the development side and a founder, that sales is just kind of falling in your lap, and you might already be thinking like it's totally like the first day of school. It's awkward. I don't know these people. Are they a fit? Are they going to buy? Will they like my solution? Will they like me? But let's flip that around for a minute. Have you ever thought that buying a mission critical SaaS is kind of like the first day of school for the buyer also? Buyers have those same thoughts, and most of them, don't really know what they're doing, and they very much want to appear like they do know what they're doing. They want to feel competent. They want to look competent. They want to come across that way. I remember our first day of school in college, and I decided that this year I was going to embrace the new year, be confident. I've got this positive attitude, goes a long way. And the day was fantastic. First class, talking to people, making friends. I mean, that was, talking to strangers is not something that it just comes naturally, which surprises a lot of people. But, getting out of my comfort zone, done. First class, nailed it. Second class, same thing. Professor came in, got started, jumped right in. I mean, no introductions, not much of anything. And very quickly, I learned that I am in a master's level physics class instead of the freshman biology class I'm supposed to be in. And then he goes, if anyone is dumb enough to have wandered in here by mistake and isn't supposed to be here, now's your chance to go. And I didn't move a muscle. I was not going to move anywhere and look dumb. And, your ideal prospects can feel that way too, because 99.9% of them are not professional software buyers. They want to do well. They want to get the right solution. They want to solve a problem. And, they don't want to be taken advantage of. And most of us want that exact same thing for our clients. I mean, that's the experience we want to deliver. But it's hard because they have to be vulnerable. They have to walk into that classroom and hope that they're in the right place and with all these strange people. And, they don't want to feel vulnerable or uncomfortable. And engaging with sales can feel a bit risky. And I'm convinced that's why buyers get far, far, far into their evaluation process before they ever raise their hands. Information is so available now. And they want to do as much as possible to get educated on the front end and get on a level playing field with the salespeople before engaging, because they don't want to feel like they don't want to feel dumb. They don't want to feel vulnerable. They don't want to feel like they could be taken advantage of because they're educated now. They know the questions to ask. They really feel confident. And so as marketers, we want to make sure we put that information in their hands so they do feel confident. But then when they do reach out to sales, and even before they do, it's our job to curate an experience that makes them feel confident, makes them feel validated, makes them feel like they're in the right place, not dumb or inadequate or wandering into the wrong room. And when we do that, we create safety. We increase the know, like, and trust factor. And when we're on the same team, sales is easy. And today's guest is going to help us do that and get on the same team and make sure we do curate that experience for our prospects so that we all feel really, really good about the entire sales experience. Well, if you want to turn your sales process into an awesome buying experience, check out today's sponsor, and that is the book Small Fish, Big Pond, Building a World-Class Business That Swims Circles Around Competitors. So, what in the world can SaaS leaders learn from fish? Small Fish, Big Pond delivers powerful marketing and leadership lessons guaranteed to enhance your marketing message, wrap value around your clients, and guide their buying journey with time-tested growth principles to attract ideal clients, convert them, and then transform them into your brand ambassadors. So pick up the print, ebook, or audio today, smallfishbigpond.com, Amazon, your favorite bookstore. If you've been around a while, you know all book profits go to charity. Always have. We were in Hawaii the last few weeks and came home last week, and I'm sure you've seen the fires in Maui. Total devastation. I mean, heavily populated, busy area. Lots of people call it home right there in Lahaina, and just completely devastated in that community. If you want to help, check out the Hawaiian Community Foundation. It's hawaiicommunityfoundation.org or the Red Cross. Both are on site and very involved in the day-to-day relief efforts, along with a number of private things that are going on right now. All profits for August will go to Maui Relief. So all book profits will go to Maui for all of August, in addition to what we're already giving and doing. And so, donate, partner with us in that, and definitely pray for the people over there right now. It is crazy, what's going on, just the devastation. Really appreciate you doing that. My guest on Tuesday was Casey Golden, founder and CEO at LuxLock, an e-commerce SaaS for luxury brands. Casey is doing the impossible and absolutely killing it. In the luxury space, e-commerce is like a dirty word. But she is doing that in a high-touch, high-personal connection industry. She helps her brand clients bring that in-store luxury buying experience to their customer wherever they are and in-store. So I love seeing founders do the impossible and succeed and do it really, really well. And then last week, our 2 episodes, both Tuesday and Thursday, we had 12 founder interviews plus 9 previous guests gave their number 1 tip for SaaS founders, and celebrating our 100th episodes, both 99 and 100, depending on how you counted. So both of those fantastic. If you missed any of those 3 episodes, go back and check them out. Lots of great stuff in there. My current guest this week is Harry Spaight. He's a master of complex sales with over 20 years experience in hyper-competitive sales environments. Anybody feel like they're in a hyper-competitive sales environment but me? Yeah, I bet. Yeah, we're all in that. Well, Harry has sold and led teams to tens of millions in sales. He's a former missionary and has a unique perspective on how to sell without being pushy. Sound good? He consults and trains businesses who want to step up their sales game so that they can thrive. He's the author of Selling with Dignity and the host of the Sales Made Easy podcast. Sales Made Easy sounds pretty good to me. Welcome, Harry Spaight. Hey, Harry, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Jeff, what is the good word? So great to be here. Thanks for having me on your platform and your show today.
We had a great conversation just a little while ago about influence and sales and kind of the difference there. How do you see that as different today in maybe marketing and creating influence, or you have influencers in the marketplace and then driving revenue?
Yeah. The thing is, sales, unfortunately, is left behind a little bit as far as the modern world is concerned. So many are still leading with product, how great their company is, how great their products are, and they're really missing an opportunity. People are looking for influencers, and you don't have to be Gary Vaynerchuk. You don't have to be Alex Hormozy. You can have your crew, your people that love you. And if it's a few hundred or a few thousand, you can help educate those people, provide value for them, and get clients for life instead of leading with what your product is or always asking for an order or a call to action. And people just get tired of that and say, Harry's just trying to sell his stuff again, so I'm going to tune him out. So education and providing value, a little humor, is a real opportunity to grow a tribe and eventually have those people buy from you.
So tell me about your background in sales. How did you get started? What did your journey look like to get to where you are now, selling with dignity?
Yeah, so I have a pretty different background from most people who got into sales. I used to do mission work. So my wife and I spent a number of years. I had a little janitorial business. I wasn't really an entrepreneur, but I had a little business that I ran. And then we did mission work. We ended up traveling to a few different countries and spent a couple of years in the Dominican Republic. And then she asked something about having kids. And I went, what? And so I realized then I needed to get some kind of income again. And I didn't want to go back to having a janitorial business. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I felt like I wanted to get into the corporate environment kind of as a challenge because I'm not college educated. I was in my mid 30s and I went, can I do that? And eventually I landed a job selling technology of all things. And just to give you the dichotomy, how different that was, Jeff, I turned computers off in the mid 90s with a button. I didn't know there was a way to shut them down. I didn't know anything about programs, software. Wow. It was crazy. And here I was selling technology, which were roughly $50,000 color printers to marketing and advertising companies. And they're using Adobe, Quark Express, all these applications. I'm sitting there on calls wondering, what are these? It's like learning Spanish, right? It was a completely new language for me. And so I took my servant mindset from the mission field, started applying it and serving others, and then my career took off.
That's awesome. It's interesting that you say that because I think technology can be somewhat of a foreign language, or for somebody that's not technical. And I think the same thing is true. Sales and marketing can be like a foreign language to someone who is technical, and that's not their expertise. So how do we bring those together so that we're really speaking the same language? How do you learn that?
Yeah, it's like anything. First of all, you have to have an open mind to it. And I think a big challenge for many is they start out saying they're no good at sales. I hear it all the time. People say, technical people, well, I'm not a salesperson.
All the time. I hear that too.
Right? So you just sold yourself is what I say. So now we've got to work against the grain. If your mind is telling you that you're not good at something or you're not something, then how can you possibly be something along those lines, right? If you say I'm not a good father or I'm not a good spouse, that's pretty self-defeating. So same is true in sales. You have to have an open mind that I can do this. And it doesn't mean you have to become a phone calling machine that you're going to make 200 calls a day. If you just make incremental progress, right? Move the needle, that 1% improvement where you start learning. It's like, look, maybe I can tell others something valuable. And I see this with technology professionals all the time. They say things like, well, I do IT, I do managed services, I do this. It's like, how about provide a little value to the person you're talking to? Is there something that's new going on in the field? having a conversation, people look at you as a subject matter expert instead of just a tech geek, for instance, right? So that's a start. It's just mindset, say, look, I can do this, I can make a little bit of progress, and then how can I provide value to the people I speak with? And you're going to make headway. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think that's exactly right. It's one step at a time. It's not giant leap. Nobody wakes up and is a born salesperson.
Right.
Actually, maybe they are born because
that's true.
yeah. Babies definitely sell us on what they need
exactly
and get us to take action. But later in life, maybe you don't just wake up and say I'm the greatest salesman in the world. But it is incremental, and it's that mindset. It's the willingness to try, the willingness to go out there and fail, the willingness to do it. You have a note on your LinkedIn, kind of two different mindsets. One, selling is hard, selling is a grind, or selling is having conversations and helping people. And which is better? And I think that's an obvious answer. But tell me about that. And how do you make that shift from this is a grind to no, selling is just having conversations and helping people?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you just hit the nail so solidly on that one. I look at that grind thing and I say it's the same thing as saying you're terrible at something. If you're straining to do something and you're going completely against what you believe in, people are going to pick up on it. There's this thing called emotional intelligence. And if you think you're hiding how much you hate something, it's like and people pick up on it and they'll say, well, what's up with you? And you're going to say, well, how did you know? Right? Because people pick up on those micro expressions on your face, your nervousness. There's all kinds of things going on. So again, that goes back to the mindset. And you say, I love what you said. No one was born a salesperson. Then you realized it immediately. And so the good side of sales is it can be very natural, all the way from that coming out of the womb to being a little toddler to being a little kid that's 5 or 6 years old, learning to negotiate with your parents. Now, I'm not talking about the kids that are throwing tantrums. My kids are like that. That's not the type of selling, right? But you can see that it can be natural. So this whole thing about, being a strong closer, this is where a lot of people think that sales is. It's like, well, I've got to close for the business. And so it's very unnatural and uncomfortable. But if you go in saying, I'm going to have conversations with people and find out what they need, find out what's important to them, find ways to serve them, yeah, there's a good chance they might like me if I do that. And then they will ask about me and they'll ask about how I serve. But if they don't ask, that's okay, because the laws of reciprocation, I'm a big believer of that. If you do the right things, you serve others, you will get your payment. It may not come from that person, but it will come from somewhere else. And that's just the way it is in sales. People say it all the time. It's like, well, this one just fell out of the sky. I have no idea. It's like, well, because you've done a lot of other things, right? That good luck happens to people who are putting in the effort. So this whole disconnect about selling being a grind versus having a conversation, something that's enjoyable, it's a huge difference maker.
So tell me about selling with dignity. What is that? Where did the concept come from?
Yes. When I was doing, before I started doing very well in sales, Jeff, I really was doing very terribly. And in fact, in a corporate environment, when salespeople are starting out and they're doing terribly, management and ownership get nervous. Did they make the right hire, right? And I was several months into it, and I was putting up a lot of goose eggs. And, I was in the sales bullpen, zeros every day, every week. And then there's month after month of zeros. And so finally I got a break, but I was doing the right things, right? But I got a break. and started to sell. And from that point on, so what was going on in my mind throughout this whole thing was I was actually written up. I was on a PIP, which I didn't know. I found this letter I kept from 25 years ago that said, like, we're going to try to help you to do this. I signed the letter and all this. So I was doing really poorly. But then I got this break and I realized it's like, I can just serve people. I can be, and I was reading a lot at the time, various authors. The Greatest Salesman in the World comes to mind, Tom Hopkins, Brian Tracy. And someone said something along the lines of, picture yourself doing the best you can at something where you're really good at it, and that will be your separator. And I had things going for me. I was saying, well, I can speak Spanish. There's not a lot of people in sales I can speak Spanish. But I also use I can serve. I can outserve anybody. I'm not going to be one of those sales guys that's all about me. And so over the years, as I got into sales leadership, I was still, I experimented with not being a servant leader. That didn't work well. When I was the barking order sales manager for a few weeks, few months, maybe, that was just not good. When I went back to serving people, I always go back to my roots. Things turned out very well, and I became a very decent sales leader along the way. So I thought, as COVID was going on, and I talked about writing a book, combining the mission field to sales and to the corporate. And I talked about this to my friends for like 10 years. And COVID hit, and I was just doing a lot of self-work with Think and Grow Rich. And one of those ideas hit me, and it was the idea of the book. And I was like, now's the time, because it was clear when I was reading Think and Grow Rich that was a message I needed to pay attention to. And so I did. And I thought, I can serve the people who are not salesy, who are not the type A personalities, that are not, super hungry, super aggressive. I'm going to go and help the people that are more like me, that just want to serve people and grow their business. And I think there'll be some people that will appreciate that. So that was really the whole, process of that book coming into existence.
I love that meshing of mission and business. How did that come about for you? How did you take those two worlds and bring them together into one?
Yeah, great question. So I think you've got to have a big picture mindset. And that just gave me the chills, that question. So it brought me back to 2008, 2009, when the economy was I was in Washington, D.C. I was leading a sales team for a Fortune 500 company. And the economy was everything was getting shut down. At the end of 2008, Obama was just coming into office, Lehman Brothers, you name the banks. It was not a pretty picture. So government started to shut down. Nonprofits, which DC was filled with, started to shut down. And we were talking to the sales team, and it's like, what are we going to do? And it was like, look, we drive the economy, right? We're not going to sit back. We drive the economy. It's like, who are we? We're like, 8, 10 people, whatever the number was. But I tied that into, we sell stuff. We help people move, right? We help generate revenue. There are jobs behind us, technician support, administration, leasing partners, people in banks. This is not just us sucking at sales, right? That's not even an option. We've got lives on the line. So we drive the freaking U.S. economy. That's what the message was. And we got fired up. And I'm telling you, we just had a killer year in 2009 that was just the complete opposite of what a lot of companies faced.
That's amazing.
It was. And just really a great story. Shift. Yeah. I mean, it was a great question. And it was that shift, because you had to people follow the news, and like you and I were chatting earlier, it's like, well, how are you doing so well and with a shaky economy? And I loved your answer. It's like, there's always shaky news, right? Just forward, sideways, backwards, whatever. You have to make do. And that's really, I think, was my first real time in a very shaky economy that we just said, the heck with this, let's just make it happen.
That's really good. I think that's true. Is if you look for problems, you're going to find them,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter. If the macro economy is great or terrible, you're going to find that. If you look for opportunities, I guarantee you'll find them. And again, it doesn't matter what happens on the macro level. There are opportunities there, and when you can find those and you're looking for them, you can seize those opportunities for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about the trillions of dollars that make up the economy. Trillions, right? It's like, isn't there enough for me in there?
Of course,
right? We don't have to go dig, find a cave to live in and think that, we're not going to make any money, because with that kind of money that's being spent, you just have to find your niche and find your people. And, if you do the work, even if you struggle a little bit in the economic times, when it comes out, you have done so much work during that time, and people start calling you. It's like, hey, I'm ready now, right? Because now they have a little more confidence because the economy, they saw something in the news that said, oh, the economy is now better, right? So that's the way some people live, right? So,
well, a question I get a lot from founders, especially technical founders that maybe sales and marketing is not their background, is they get to the point where they're ready to hire a VP of sales or sales reps. And the question is, how do I do that? Do I hire a rep first? Do I hire like a VP first? What does that first hire look like? And then how do I build that into a high performing sales team?
Yeah. And I think that's you have to figure out for the founder, are you the founder sales minded at all? Because you have to lead somebody. And if you can't lead, if you're just going to shut yourself in the office and just put yourself in front of the computer and say, I'm technical and that's all I am, then you need to find a guy or a gal that can lead and build a team and start selling. And it's a difficult challenge, but some people, like, I think with the way the situation is now with the outbound calling, there are so many companies that do calls and nurture, that if you find a sales leader that can build a team but can also run appointments and ideally has some experience with technology and doing this before, because it's not easy, but you've got to find, the people are out there, right? It's, sometimes we sell ourselves as like, oh, it's so hard to find. Nobody wants to work. And we do all these all or nothing things. Like, nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to do this. And then again, that's self-defeating. All you need is one person. So you may have to interview a lot of people, but you want to find the person that's going to help build a team, can run sales calls, and maybe spend a little money on a company that can nurture and help develop a funnel, so that when that person you hire can bring someone on, there's now a funnel of people that are interested that you can start having more meetings with. That would be my strategy. Thoughts?
I think that's a really good first step, and finding the one before you start thinking too big and I need to hire 5 or 10. But it's really having the process that is down and repeatable, something that's shared. But I think the most important thing there is if it's not you that's going to lead that, then having a co-founder, having somebody else that can really lead that sales effort is super important. Because throwing people at problems doesn't work.
Right.
Like, hiring a salesperson does not generate sales. And I think that's a big misconception.
Yeah. And, especially, salespeople typically want some accountability. If you just say, go sell stuff and bring me back the business because I hired you now. It's just, sorry. It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
I've seen it a lot of times.
Yeah.
That's kind of the process.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard of people just hire 5 or 6 people, fire them after all of them after 5 or 6 months, and start all over again. And I mean, the
Right.
money that you're just throwing down the drain for that, and it's just like there's better ways of doing that. And you got to look in the mirror, right? If you think people can, I mean, they're not entrepreneurial salespeople. They can be entrepreneurial, but if they're looking for a paycheck, that's not really entrepreneurial, right? That's a big difference. So if you're just, we're going to give you a draw, maybe a little ramp up time, but if the person says, "Well, I need a higher salary," well, okay, that's telling you they're not entrepreneurial, so they don't think like you. So if you're going to carry somebody, then you need to lead them. You're following the logic here?
Yes.
Right? So
yes.
There's a lot of signs going on in the way that you're hiring a person. If someone wants a piece of the action, that tells me that they're entrepreneurial. If someone says, "Look, I need $120,000 salary," then that tells me they're going to really need leadership. And not that entrepreneurs don't need leadership, but it's like some people just are not making good use of the day. So you have to have this accountability and say, what's going on today? Where are your meetings? Who are you meeting with? And then what else are you doing? Right. And so you have these quick calls and conversations. And, if you don't like the answers, that I got news, that doesn't change.
Right.
So yeah, you gotta count the loss early, unfortunately, when you realize that the person is looking for something to do and there's so much to do. You gotta rethink that one.
So how do you compete if you're not offering the giant salaries and those kinds of things to salespeople? How do you compete and really find great people in the market?
Well, shockingly, Jeff, salespeople are not always about money. They want to be part of a team. And, not you, but people who have this idea that salespeople are all these egotistical, I want to be the top dog, I want to make millions of dollars. Now, some of the best salespeople are just going to be, give me the number, give me $80,000. I'm going to work hard every day. I'm going to bring my lunch pail to work. I'm going to make the calls. I love those people, right? Because I can count on them. They're going to work. They're not going to complain a lot. And, they're maybe never be the $250,000 person, but there's what you need, right? You need the revenue that these types of people bring in. So I don't necessarily say look for the pretty, whatever, the flamboyance, the high maintenance people that are just going to complain if things don't go perfectly. So when you're building a team, recognize that there are some people that will like team. People work, no offense, but people work at 7-Eleven, right? People work in a lot of places where the pay is not great. And some of those, not that I'm saying that's going to be your pool of candidates, but there's great people in grocery stores. There's
100%.
great people in restaurants. And so when you're out and about and you're looking at a person and say, man, I like the way this person is treating me, I'm going to say, have you ever thought about an opportunity in sales? And those people will say, no, I don't think I'd be very good at sales. Well, you say you're actually pretty good at what you're doing, and you're the type of person that I think could do very well in sales because of this and that, right? The way you greet people, the way you show up, you've got skills. And if you want to talk more about it, here's my number, right? Let's meet for coffee. And when you're doing that, you're going to find people that you may not have envisioned being part of your team. And then, these people work hard because, making $40,000 in a restaurant, unless you're working in a high-end restaurant, but somewhere around there versus making 70, 80, 100, it changes their lives. And those people work hard. What's your thoughts on that? I see a lot of nodding.
Well, I love that. And I've actually recruited that way a number of times. I mean, I'm always on the lookout for great people.
Yeah.
And then if I find a great person, now it's time to figure out where do they fit in the organization?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it sales? Is it client success? But you have somebody that takes great care of you, that provides outstanding service, no matter what it is. If it's at a restaurant, that can be a great opportunity. If it's somebody that is just loving life and doing great in retail, and that's the kind of person that I want. So it's really finding those gems and always being on the lookout for them and say, hey, I like that. Would you like to do something different?
Yeah.
And sometimes yes, sometimes no. Or the people that are doing demos or samples or selling wireless in the grocery store.
Exactly.
It's those kinds of things, and they're having those conversations, and you're really good at this. Now, how would you like to up your game and sell something at a bigger level?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And if you have a little story to tell, right, along the way of helping, because recruiting is not easy. Recruiting is sales.
Yes.
Right. So having these conversations, like in sales, having a good story about how someone that was in the restaurant industry that never thought they'd be cut out for sales is now making six figures, and they've been in sales for 20 years. Right. It's changed their life.
Yes.
Right. And this is the thing where you go from the service industry to where you're now making six figures. I mean, you're in a completely different lifestyle that
yes.
right now can have change the whole trajectory of a future family too. Right. So it's a lot of good things that you can, and having these stories, like, who do I know that's done this? Right. But people, entrepreneurs, you eat out a lot. I'm telling you, there are people that you're walking by, especially if you find someone who is in management in a restaurant,
yes.
right? Where they're a real go-getter and they're working 80 hours a week and they're doing nothing but turnover and they've got this great personality. It's like, have you ever thought about doing something different? That might be sales related where you're working regular hours, 8 to 6 or something, 8, and you throw out a 10-hour thing. But, it's funny because they're like, oh, no, because I work 80 hours a week, right?
Right. I'd never have time to go even look for something like that. So, well, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah. And
those are some of the best candidates as well, because you're really building loyalty in there, because you're changing their lives, and they may be around for, decades, could be years, could move on and do other things. I've had people that do that and they work 5 years and then they go start their own company.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely life changing. And I think that's one of the most gratifying things about being an entrepreneur is changing lives for clients, changing lives for employees, seeing a trajectory, because that's kind of my story as well, being on a trajectory and somebody stepping in and giving me an opportunity that completely changed my life, changed my complete life trajectory. And to be able to pass that on is so fulfilling.
Oh my goodness, Jeff. Yeah. I mean, you're reminding me of so much here of that, but yes, I totally agree. I mean, I can think of a woman that came out of the restaurant business probably 13, 15 years ago. I'm not with that company anymore, obviously, but she's still there. I hired her in sales. She was, we didn't have the patience like you need, right? It was really, things were changing back in that era of where salespeople were becoming less and less valuable. Google was becoming, where the sales cycle was. At one point, salespeople were viewed as messengers, and buyers would look at salespeople bringing value as like, what's the latest? Well, eventually, when that goes out, it's difficult to get appointments because people would just say, I'm not in the market. Well, this person came out of the restaurant. She did a great job. And we just said, she's really not great in sales because she can't ask for the order. She doesn't feel good about the pricing, but she is just so good, so smart, so service minded. I said, can we put her in the service department? And so they said, yes. So I asked her, I said, so what do you think about going over? She's still there. She's now a project manager. This is, again, it's changed her life from working a gazillion hours to having a normal life and being part of a team and, helping companies with technology. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things that happen with that.
I think there's a lot of crossover between service and sales. And is that kind of how you teach sales, or how you kind of the process?
I just had to think about that for a second, because where I came from, it was it was really confrontational, because people would look at, on the service side of things, people would look at salespeople as over-promising, under-delivering, lying to get the deals, and so forth, right? Because they believed that salespeople were crooks and whatever, right? All of the things that are the bad thoughts about salespeople, a lot of these service people believed it. But then they would find the good ones that they trusted and funnel leads to them and say, well, you're one of the good ones. I don't believe all salespeople are bad. I believe that some of them will take shortcuts, but in general, salespeople, they have to be honest or they're going to be caught, right? And if the dishonest ones get found out, and they move on pretty quickly. So to answer that question, I think, you want to try to build that relationship between sales and service, because they can feed each other. Right? When you get good on the service side of things, where now the service folks can spot out opportunities, because the salesperson will say things like, hey, if you see this, I've got something for you, right? If you see this, let me know. And, here's a, gift certificate for a great restaurant or something. And that goes a long way when you can get that kind of synergy going. So I suggest getting people in meetings together and, whatever, right? Where they're having conversations together versus sales is on one side of the room, service is on the other, and they don't talk. That's not healthy. That's not giving you the best bang for your dollar, I think.
I see that in a lot of bigger organizations where there are true silos.
Yeah.
And you're right. Just a bunch of rocks being thrown back and forth between service and sales.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's just because, people are different, right? I always tell salespeople that these people, when you treat them right, they will be money for you, right? If you step all over them and, you throw them under the bus, like, this is the thing that you got to own everything you do. And you just take the blame, and this is true in life, it's true in parenting, it's true in leadership. You just got to take responsibility. And you can't throw someone else under the bus. And if it's your teammates, your client is going to see that you're self-protecting and you're complaining about someone on your team, that's not good. Right? So you, as a salesperson, as a leader, you just got to take responsibility and say, we'll do better. We'll fix it. We'll do better. And just do better, right? But when you start blaming, unfortunately, that's going to cause conflict, and that's not good.
So when you hire a sales team, a lot of times you'll bring in, one rep, two reps, and then, start building out from there. And then, ultimately you do need leadership. Sometimes leadership comes from inside, sometimes outside. But it seems like a lot of times it's the top salesperson is the one that gets tagged as the leader, but often the salesperson that's really good does not make a great sales leader, sales manager.
Yeah.
Why is that, and how can you make that a good transition?
Yeah. I have been there. And when I first got into sales leadership, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought everyone was like me. I thought, as top performer, everybody wanted to be a top performer. I was like, what are you doing? I'm yelling at people, right? It's not my personality. It was just complete chaos and frustration. Eventually I got trained and I found out that sales leadership is like servant. It can be like servant leadership. It can be the same. Like, oh, I'm pretty good at that. I can do that. And sure enough, that worked, right? But you have to invest in coaching, because, people don't, let's see, what is the word? They don't know how to teach what comes natural to them. right? You have to be really cognizant of how you do this and write things down and then be able to train someone else that. Most of us who just come out of sales will just say, well, just do what I do.
Right,
And,
right.
The person looking at you is like, I don't know how to do what you do. So you have to coach a ton, and you have to coach the leader. They need coaching. And if you can't provide the coaching, you have to find somebody that can. And that is going to help that person be successful and their team be successful. Like, I'll give you an example. Sales meetings. The manager goes around the room and he asks people what they're going to write for business. And then, tell me what you're going to write this week. I've seen all this play out many times, and people give this ridiculous number of how much business they're going to write. The best months are the first day of the month. Of all the promises that are made, the end of the month is terrible. And then it's like, what happened? So, right? What happened? You said last week you were going to write this. What happened? Why didn't you? Tell us why you didn't do it. Tell us why you didn't do what you said you were going to do. It's like, oh, so let's have morale improve. The beatings and whippings will continue until morale improves. So this is where you help people, you coach people, you provide value on a team meeting. You ask, what's the business looking like? What are the appointments looking like for this week? Where are the challenges? And then you support that versus berating people because they're not doing their job as good as you would as a superstar salesperson, right? So that's really a challenge, I think. And the more you understand that people need love, nurturing, coaching, and will want to be part of the team, the better off it will be.
That's great. So compensation, we talked about it a little bit earlier. How do you structure a comp plan that makes sense, that incentivizes the right things? And how do you balance, what I've seen of not wanting to pay salespeople much versus really incentivizing them to do great things?
Yeah. I'd say that the more they sell, the more you find ways to pay them, right? So get rid of all caps. You can always change the comp plan down the road, but in the beginning, you need business. And if it's 50% of the profit, whatever that number is, you go extreme in the beginning, because this is how you get excitement, people making a lot of money, but not taking shortcuts, but they've got to feel like, hey, this is a place where I can make a nice living. Now, eventually you change the comp plan for what your drivers are in business. Like, some companies will pay straight commission, everything the same, whatever the number is, right? If it's 10%, if it's 30%, whatever that number is, they pay it all the same. Well, if you're trying to hit drivers like new business, or I call it add-on business, or cross-selling, or whatever the term is, if that's really a priority, then pay more on that. New business, you can pay a lot on new business, but you got to understand that typically margins are going to be less on new business than cross-selling inside of an account or account-based management, where people already know you and trust you. They're not shopping you. It's not like you're ripping people off, but it's healthy margins, the way I look at it, healthy profit. That's good for everybody. And you've got to just calculate. It's like, okay, so how can I bring excitement to my salespeople? And if you think that, you got to ask, like, who you're hiring. If they're used to making $40,000 or $50,000, then $60,000 is a lot, and that's okay. You can find comp plans, so you can do something for that. But if you get a top performer that's making six figures and you're squeezing them, I'm not sure I'm answering the question, but you've got to think about how you can make that person happy, how you can get them to six figures fastest so that they stay with you. What's your thought on the way I'm thinking here?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's really aligning the goal, the business goal. It's the greatest management principle in the world. It's people do what they're incented to do.
Yeah.
And so it's making sure that those things are aligned. I think that's where a lot of things go wrong, is when there's that misalignment.
Yeah.
And priorities do change.
Yeah. And guess what? Salespeople figure out the easiest ways to make money on the comp plan.
You better believe it. If there is a loophole, they will find it and exploit it and do a bunch of that.
Yeah. It's so funny because, coming from the sales and then doing comp plans, it's like, okay, what loopholes do I have here? Right.
Right.
Here's one is like, oh my goodness, how did we miss that one? Right. It's funny, but they do find it. But I think like today, there are things like if you have a new division, this company I work with, they have a new division. I keep encouraging, it's like pay more. Throw money at this stuff. Throw money at contests, appointment settings, meetings. Get that activity going and throw money at it because it's going to build excitement. Otherwise, reps are going to do what they have always done. Right. And so if they're comfortable earning what they earn, which is what they'll do, they get to a certain point and say, this is what I earn, sort of whatever. I forgot the terminology for that, but they get comfortable. They reach the point. Then they don't want to try new things. And they went from growth mindset to fixed. And this is where you got to say, I've got to move the needle here. And we're going to throw some money at this one and pay X for some little contest, but it's going to drive activity, and that's what you really want.
So do salespeople get to a place, is this a common thing where they're making enough or so much that they just kind of coast?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like the 300 hitter in baseball. They don't turn into the 390 hitter. They're 300, right? Their 280 is a 280. It's the same is true with income. So if the sales rep, I mean, I remember speaking about me is like coming from poverty, which I was, when you're working a few hours as a janitor and doing mission work, is, below the poverty line was my income. When I hit like 60 grand, it was like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is so much money. Then it was like, I wonder if I could hit like 80 or whatever. Then I reached the level, right? When I reached the level, I won't give what that is. It's like I look back at my income, and this is true down the road with all sales reps. It's like you're $100,000, maybe 110, you're 150, maybe 140, maybe 160, but it is amazing where people settle what their mindset believes that they're worth. So yeah, we all deal with that. It's, there's a few that can say, I'm going to be worth $1 million a year. And those people are special, right?
So how do they break through that? If they say, I'm here and I want to be more, but I'm just, mentally stuck at that level. How do they break through and get to that next level?
Yeah, it's not easy. So first of all, I'm not sure when we look at people that are doing that, and I'm trying to think back of the conversations I've had over the years, and you've got to have people that really have a growth mindset. If they don't have it, if they're not, so here, I'm going to backtrack. Is the person a reader? Does the person do self-improvement videos and podcasts? If the answer is no, don't expect that you're going to move mountains with that person, right? Because they have to want to be better. And what happens a lot in sales, people reach a level and then they say things like, I know what I'm doing. I can coast. And when they're in that level, it's not like you want to get rid of them, because it's like, hey, they're bringing in whatever that number of revenue is. It may frustrate you as an entrepreneur because they could do so much more. But if they're not doing what you do as far as self-improvement, being better, then it's unlikely you're going to move the needle with them until they start, right? You share articles, you share videos, you do things with a team. I mean, I'm constantly showing, motivation, I'm talking about the value of podcasts, books I read. And people look at me a lot of times in sales. It's like, I don't have time for that. Where do you find the time? It's like, get up early.
I hear that all the time.
Shut off Netflix, right? Stop watching sports all weekend. Yes. There's so much time And what's 15 minutes a day where for a little self-improvement to give you a different outlook on things. So yeah, that's, do you throw fertilizer on a field that is full of sand? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people look at that a lot of times, and Netflix is only $20 a month, but I think for many people, it's actually costing them $50,000 or $100,000 a year.
Oh yeah.
And it's because they're doing that instead of really filling their head with something that's going to make such a difference in their lives.
Yeah. So how about Audible?
All the time. I do that constantly. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I've got Audible. I'm telling you, if I heard someone say Audible is too much, I don't want to spend $15 a month on books. It's like, how much do you spend on cable? Right? Give me a break. What is going to make you so much better in all aspects of your life? And you don't, anyway, you know where I am on that one.
Yes. Well, where can people learn more about you and Selling with Dignity online?
Yeah, sellingwithdignity.com is the place. If they want to download a few chapters of the book, they could do that. But feel free to visit me. And I'm also on LinkedIn. But yeah, you Google Selling with Dignity, you will find Harry Spaight. So this has been a real honor, Jeff, and great questions. Really got me thinking here today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for being on the show.
You got it, man.
Thanks again, Harry, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Harry at sellingwithdignity.com. All links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. Lots of great content there, full podcast episodes as well. Please subscribe and follow us there. Everyone who subscribes this week gets a back to school time machine, allowing you to go back to the exact moment you maybe forgot your homework, your locker combination, wandered into the wrong classroom, or I don't know, maybe forgot your pants. Now, batteries not included with the time machine. But what is included is another episode next Tuesday where we have founder Bish Smear, founder and CEO of Enigmatic Smile. It's a fintech that has cracked the code on customer loyalty programs that, actually create loyalty. Can't tell you, I don't need another card or another 10 apps on my phone. He's got a great thing for loyalty, and it is spreading like wildfire. And on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series next Thursday, Dan Radu, who leads strategy operations and marketing execution for global marketing teams. Companies come to Dan and his team when they want to make better data-driven decisions or need help scaling their global marketing operations. Sounds pretty good. So I will see you next time. And as always, make sure you're in the right classroom and enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.